Welcome everyone, Farmer Cop here. Today we're going to do some tests to see how the operating hours are calculated for both machinery and various implements. If this is what you're looking for, please stay tuned. All right, folks, so as mentioned, we're going to take a look at operating hours today. So I had some questions about this, and I think I know how it's going to work, and I have some predictions, but I wanted to test it and put a video out to kind of show this. So this doesn't matter a ton as far as when you're using equipment out and about and around your farm, but when you lease something, let's say we're going to lease this, you pay a per operating hour cost. So obviously for a tractor, my guess is going to be if you're driving it, yes, the hours are going to keep racking up. But do they rack up if you sit in it with the engine running? Do they rack up if you sit in it without the engine running? We're going to test that. So I have two new tractors here. All I did was drive them down from the store. So now this one's up and running. What I'm going to do is I'm going to activate it here on auto drive. It's going to go 12 miles an hour, but it's going to take it 8 minutes to get around there. So to get to 0.1 hours, it needs to go for at least 6 minutes. So that should be over that. So that should be going along that route. And I'm just going to sit in this one and let it go and see how this works. So kind of while this is going on in the background, that's going to take a while. It's going to drop. It loops around something like, we're on no man's land here. It's something like it loops around. There we go. It loops like, I think, up and around this way and back down. But it's going to take it a while. I mean, it's going to take it 9 minutes. So I'm not going to keep you guys in for the whole time. So I want to look at this for machinery. The other thing I want to look at, a couple other questions. So let's say I wanted to lease a plow. A plow is a great example of something you might lease. So if I go in here to lease a plow, am I going to get billed by the hour for a plow if I'm just driving it around? What if it's just hooked up to the back of a tractor? So let's go ahead and buy one of these. Well, we'll get that in a second. I'll set that up in a second. But I want to know if I'm going to get billed by the hour for this, if it's just sitting on the back of a tractor and I'm sitting in the tractor with it running. Is that going to bill me for it, or is it only time that I have it lowered down and I'm using it in the dirt? So that's one thing I want to test, and I'm assuming that's going to be the same for most implements that don't need to be turned on or off. Now the other thing I have a question for is like something like power harrow, a seeder, something like that. Am I going to get billed if I have a seeder and it's just sitting on the back of my tractor turned off? Am I going to get billed if I'm just driving it around? Am I going to get billed for it, or is the operating hours going to go up if it is just turned on sitting behind the tractor, or is it just going to go up if I'm actually using it on a field? So that is a couple of the questions I want to ask. I'm going to put all of this into a chart at the end as I normally do. So I'm going to test a couple of these things out. I'm going to get done with this test, and then I'll bring you guys back in, and then we'll go over the results of our first test here, and then we'll continue to get set up for those continuous tests. All right, so the results are pretty much as I expected. I did also run a test on this combine as well, this harvester, this Rossel Mash, so we'll throw that up there. So this is just the first part of this test. So the tractor, if it was on and moving, if it's moving, obviously it has to be on. So I just figured that's assumed at that point. So moving, yes, it does raise up the hours, or it does raise up the operating hours. Harvester, also yes, if it's moving, it raises up the operating hours. Now, if it's on and it's stationary, it's not moving, and you're inside of it, then yes, both the tractor and the harvester, the operating hours are going to go up. Now, here's the one that may or may not surprise some people, which it makes sense, but just to be aware of it. If you're someone who likes to leave your vehicles on and then go somewhere else, be careful, because if you have it stationary, it's on, but you're not inside of it. So you turn a vehicle on, then you get out of it, it's still racking up those operating hours. So just be aware of that. Now, obviously, or the next one's pretty obvious. If it's off and you're stationary and you're inside of it or outside of it and it's off, you're not going to rack up any operating hours. Now, the harvester has a little bit more we could do. I'd stationary while the harvester was on, which means the cutter was going, and I did it while I was inside and while I was outside. Both ways, it was racking up the operating hours. Now, if it was moving and the harvester was on, it was also racking up the operating hours. So that does make sense. So there's that for you. Now, the next thing I'm going to go ahead and test out, I think I'm going to go ahead and test, if we go into the store here, I'm going to run a test on just a plow. I'm just going to do this one just to keep it simple. I'm also going to run a test on, I think, this seeder just to keep it simple. And I'm also going to run a test on just a sprayer. So I'm going to run a test on that as well. Again, I'm not going to go through and do every single possible category. That would take me forever, but just to kind of give you an idea as far as some of these things go. So as far as what this next test is going to encapsulate, for the plow, it'll be pretty simple. I'll do lifted if you're inside, outside, you know, blah, blah, blah. We'll go through all that and see if it racks up any hours. Now, the tricky one will be the sprayer and the seeder. There's quite a few different variables. So the next chart's going to be quite a bit longer just to show you all the different variables, just so we can see, because there's so many different aspects and different methods you can hold on to it or drive around with it if you're now including an implement. So I'm going to go ahead and run that test, and then I'll bring you guys back and kind of show you guys the results. All right, we are back. So maybe not interesting results, or maybe not the way it should work, but let me just show you the results. So first I'm going to show you the plow. So the plow, let me explain all this to you, and then we'll go over the other two. So if that thing is moving and it's attached to a tractor, so the tractor is moving, it's lifted, lowered, or working, it's going to rack up operating hours. Now the next part down below, just look at that first column, or that first section on there, on. That means the tractor it's attached to is on, not the implement's on. You can't turn a plow on. So, or at least the plow we used. So you can see that if the tractor is on, then it's going to rack up operating hours. If the tractor's off, it's not going to rack up operating hours. And you can see all the different ones. So like for the on ones, I did lowered with me outside of the vehicle, lifted me outside of the vehicle, lowered me inside, lifted me inside, working with me inside, working with me outside. I did it off, lowered outside, off, lifted out. Yeah, so you get the point. So I looked at that and I thought, okay, well, if that's how that works, then I wonder if that's going to be, if it's just going to be, if the tractor's on, the implement that it's attached to is going to gain operating hours regardless. So when I did the seeder and the sprayer, I didn't bother making a chart because it was that way. I tested all those various aspects. I tested the sprayers and the seeders lifted, lowered, with me inside, with me outside, with them moving, with them working, with them on and lowered, on and lifted, me inside, outside, every possible combination. And regardless of whether or not the seeder or the sprayer was turned on, every single one of them only gained operating hours when the tractor that they were attached to was turned on. Now, so if the tractor that the implement's attached to is turned on, it's going to gain operating hours. Otherwise, it's not. So that's how you have it for that. Now, I also went through, because I was curious, and I didn't do all the same tests on the leased ones, but I wanted to make sure it was the same for leasing. So I leased 2 of everything. I did 2 plows, 2 sprayers, and 2 seeders, and I attached each of them to a tractor. I had one on and one off. And I tested that, and only the ones that were attached to the tractor that were on were the ones that gained any operating hours. So there you have it. It works that way. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know. I've never tested that sort of thing before, because I never knew exactly how operating hours worked. And I honestly assumed that if, for example, you leased a plow, if you had it on the back and you had it raised and you're driving to your farm, I didn't think you were going to gain any operating hours on the plow, but you actually are if you're traveling with it. So something to keep in mind as far as that stuff goes. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today for this test. This test took me probably 3 or 4 hours to complete, so it may not be a very long video, but it was a long test, so I hope you did enjoy. If you did not, I apologize. Hopefully you enjoy some tests I do in the future, but if you did enjoy, drop a like down below. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button up on your screen to join the Farmer Cop channel, and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss any future videos that I may post. This has been Farmer Cop. Thank you guys for coming and watching.